Great. So the goal today is to kind of explain on a high level the token economics. Yeah, so basically what we've done is we've created there's all these cryptos in the world that are going up in value, but they don't really have anything behind them. There's no gold behind them. They're all speculation. So there's nothing to keep like Bitcoin or any of these other coins from going really high, but then also falling really hard. So what we've done is we've started to created a token that's actually backed by hard assets. And what we believe the gold of our era is food, water, and community. And so we're creating a set of assets of real estate that are communities across the world that are all tokenized, and they create the value of the token. So said in other ways, we've taken the securities or the shares of the company and we've tokenized them. So when one garners a token through investment or labor or whatnot, or contributions of some sort, they get shares of an asset pool that has true value. It's actual ownership shares in a pool of assets that we can say this building is worth this much money, and we can very clearly define the value, and we clearly have a token that has now a true value. Now, in addition to that, this token or these tokens can be speculated upon. They can be sold on secondary markets just like any other crypto. However, there's now what would be called a floating hard floor. There's a true base value. As we grow the membership network, as we grow more locations, as we build new locations, as we increase the property values of locations, all of that increases the token valuation.
And then one way to walk through this would be, normally your route or your avenue as a general person in the Western world is to work hard, get a job, make enough money to put a down payment down, get a house, start a family, all that stuff. These are all great pre-COVID. That works well for a standard model of living, but it's breaking down. Another route is you could go live in community. There's communities all over the world that are setting up these places all over the place. But the energy, the sweat equity, the opportunities that are afforded to you are limited because it's at one location that you have to develop relationships with, you have to build trust with the community members, and then all the work you do to establish the value of that community is not shared. It's all inside the community. You can't take it with you if you were decided to leave. So what we've done is we've taken those two models and made them better. One, you're able to buy a fractional share of the total asset pool or the living quarters within Cohere through the investments or the work you do to garner equity. And then two, everywhere you go, no matter how much equity you earn, no matter how much value you put into any one location, that value goes with you everywhere you go. So you're able to continually increase your equity ownership while also having the flexibility of living anywhere you want in the community, in the network.
Is there a set amount of tokens, or can more be created?
There's always more to be created. It's depending on the value that comes in, either through capital, fiat, cryptocurrencies, or through established properties.
And then in addition to that is labor.
Right.
So one of the great things is in this ecosystem that we're building, as Josh was talking about, is we go to an intentional community, they work their butts off for many, many years, then something shifts, they want to leave, they have no ease of equity. In this case, you actually have that ease of equity. It's actually all liquid. And what that allows, that's what the ecosystem now allows, is that someone can come in, farm on a community, actually make equity inside of the real estate holding, and actually take that equity. Of course, that's their equity. Mm-hmm. They now can buy and sell with it, do whatever they want.
Yeah, so our compensation model is really pivotal to how we do this, because we want to encourage people who, no matter what scale you're at, if you are a good fit for the community, there is a way for you to gain ownership. It doesn't really matter if you have a bunch of money or not.
Yeah, because a big thing for us is that we're helping to move ownership from individuals to a commons. And when we do that, once we add all of this resource together, we now create a backing for a currency and the backing for a token. And right now there's all this talk about the dollar plummeting in value through hyperinflation, which is already occurring, or deflation. Who the heck knows? At the end of the day, people want stability in the currency. You want stability in your asset. So people are putting all this money into something like Dogecoin or all these things that are all speculative. With this, people are actually gaining token that are going up in value as we grow the network. They always has a true stable value.
Yeah, I know. You bringing up stage Dogecoin or Shiba Inu or whatever, they're all That's a good example of what we see as like the current kind of issues with the token world. It's not that it's a problem. It's just that everybody who's buying it is buying it because they think it's going to go up. So you don't get U.S. dollars because you think they're going to go up. You get them because they help you exchange energy between each other to get goods and services. So that coin already is doomed to fail at some point, because at some point in time there aren't enough people who believe it will go up and then it'll collapse. That really points to the critical value of perception. Perception is what makes a currency viable. And if people don't believe it is valuable, they're not going to invest in it. And so what we've done is, by having the buildings, the physical assets, and having people be able to earn equity through the work that they're doing, they know it's valuable. They put the work into it. They have the direct access to that value.
Yeah, and furthermore, the facilities that we're building are really the cream of the creme of high-quality architecture with integrated food production, water retention. And we believe that, I mean, if you live in BC, Canada right now, the price of food's skyrocketing because all the roads have been washed out because of the multiple atmospheric rivers pummeling the area. That having access to food, water, and good quality shelter inside a community, we believe that is a value that's going to continue to go up.
Yeah, I think too, like the access of community being really critical, because of it's kind of like the adage, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Like, everybody who puts a little bit in, you get more out of it than you put in. So your individual worth is much greater because you have so many people around you.
Yeah, so like right now our token's selling at $10 a token. And again, these tokens are security shares. They're the securitized shares in the company. And as we onboard more and more land, as we build more locations, as we grow our membership network, those tokens go up in value. So, another 3 or 4 years, they are very easily at $50 a token. And if we scale rapidly, which is very possible, they could be much, much, much higher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, basically for us, it's like how we grow and how we... it's not about growth solely. It's not about just constantly trying to consume and bring more in. It's more like, what do we do with the assets that are brought in? So by a member taking care of some other member's kids, for example, that's a value add to the system because of the fact that it can be measured. So that value actually increases the value of the token because you're paying somebody in tokens. So
One last thing I'll add is that as what this starts to do is, currently our economic model of this version capitalism, which I personally hold as rather crony. I feel like there's very few free markets in any industry. Regardless, the current economic model kind of pushes for how quickly you can consume, or how best you can undercut the other person or party, the more money you make. When everyone's currency is tied to an asset pool, it's like, you can kind of think of it like my tokens are actually a share of the GDP. So as we grow the value of this international decentralized real estate pool, that as it goes up in value, so does my value. It's like as a nation becomes more profitable, your money goes up in value.
I
was just going to add that what's exciting about that is now I'm financially incentivized to help another community. I'm financially incentivized to steward the forest or the farm. I'm actually financially incentivized to be a good steward of the place I live. Because all of that is directly connected in creating the valuation of the whole, increasing the valuation of the whole. So it's actually increasing my personal money. So now I'm financially rewarded for being a good neighbor. I'm financially rewarded for being a steward of the planet and helping others.
Yeah, I mean, all of this sits inside of our philosophy of like, economy is based on incentives. And what incentives we are offered or have opportunity for is going to be how the economy matures. And so capitalism, which was effectively kind of thought up in the 1600s by Adam Smith and a bunch of other people in that era, the Scottish Enlightenment, had the vision of if you just let markets do their thing and didn't have a top-down control, you would have a really beautiful system. And we agree. We think that form of capitalism is kind of utopic in a way, though. It's very hard to get to. So if you can align incentives to be more about true relational connection, when I see that you're getting benefit, I'm going to win, and so are you. So.
What's the name of the coin, the token?
Right now, it's called. The security token is called just Cohere tokens, just Cohere.
And we're not. So, if you look at the market, the token market, I think Liam, who's leading our token side, said there's 10,000 or so different tokens. All these tokens they're launching, and they're trying through marketing to garner trust, velocity, or the three. Velocity money, trust.
Oh yeah. They're trying to increase. So in order to be a true currency, you need store value, you need transactional volume, you need fungibility, and a couple other things.
But what I'm trying to get at is many of these tokens are starting and just trying to create a huge amount of hype. Like, adopt our token, it's gonna be the next best thing, and yada yada yada. It's all cool. However, we kind of think that's cart before the horse. We've taken the inverse approach. Let's build the most important assets we can on the planet right now.
Yeah.
Tokenize that, and then inside of that, we already have an internalized economy. We already have the trust fee. We already have fungibility. And so we're taking the inverse approach. We're not really heavily marketing the token side. However, the token side is what, in some respects, is the most important aspect of this. It is helping to garner or usher in an economy based on stewardship and mutual thriving.
Right. It's like we talk about it. Well, it's like in order for blockchain technology to be really adopted, it needs to become tangible to people. And so by having the physical assets be backed by the digital assets, you're making those coins real to people. They can touch it, they can feel them, have engagement with it. So I think what we're doing is we're sort of laying the groundwork for mass adoption, and this will happen eventually where everybody's using tokens, they don't even know it. It's not even, it's a part of the system, and they don't even recognize it.
And how are new tokens created? Like if somebody enters...
Right, you can think of it kind of energy in, tokens out. So any kind of energy in, whether that's fiat capital or land or compensation for work, all of that is energy into the company, and as long as the company understands that's valuable, and it's like kind of expressed as so, then there'll be tokens out.
And the company decides how many, like let's say I do this video for you, that's energy in, and then the company would decide that's worth so many tokens, and those tokens are created.
Well, it's actually, just to be clear, it's actually, so the unique thing about our securities is that this is going to be a little more technical on the other side. So securities are often expressed as percentage of equity, meaning out of 100% you have, let's say, 10%. That number, that 10% is, you're not clear how much that's worth until an accident event, until some sort of liquidity event. Like, that makes it very difficult. But our tokens, our securities are explicitly defined at the dollar value. So when energy comes in, we define a dollar value for that. We say this is worth $100 or something. So we're going to give you an equivalent amount of tokens in that. That allows us to establish a very clear exchange rate. It also, we don't define how much the tokens are worth. There is an algorithm that the tokens operate off of that removes our ability to manipulate the token's value.
It's called the dynamic bonding curve.
Yeah.
But it's basically some simple calculus as we grow the value of the pool, and so again, these, like, let's say something like a land investment or a building investment. So we hire 3 assessors, we get the fair market value assessed, and then we issue tokens commensurate to that value. With labor, for instance, it's, we're just using the normal hourly rate. And then for fiat, it's already fiat, so that's really easy.
Oh, and then I guess another piece that may not be as obvious to even ask, which is another benefit to using our model is that when we allocate a certain amount of the company ownership, so for us it's 40%. We're allocating 40% to everybody who wants to get involved. What happens is that 40% is infinite. You can stuff as many people as you want in that, and that's what forces the token value to go up. It's because you only have a limited percentage, so as you buy more into the company, it forces the value of the token to go up. So that means that we can actually sort of infinitely create tokens. Now, at some point in time, those tokens might be too expensive for an investor to feel comfortable putting capital in.
Yeah, again.
Well, I was just say at that point,
but
we're already operating.
But more importantly, like, the token isn't. It's a true representation of hard asset value.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like we just don't go around minting tokens. It's very much tied. The value of the token is tied to that. It's a true representation of hard assets. It's like gold. Like when the gold was behind the dollar, there's a true hard asset behind it, and that's what we're getting back to. And then as, again, the dollar is going up or down in value, in our case the token is going up in value much more quickly, is as we grow the network and as we grow the profitability, and then all the amazing network effects that start to occur.
What do you expect the token to be at in, like, let's say 2 years, considering everything goes to plan on how big the company grows? Where do you...
Well, we can't promise anything, but currently, our current projections show that once we build 4 locations, or 3 locations at year 4, our token valuation is at $50.
Something like that, yeah. It's very hard to tell because it depends on a lot of factors.
But that's at a very, very conservative rate of growth. One of the things that is really exciting in our model is that we can actually tokenize existing assets.
Mm-hmm.
So the numbers I just gave you from the token going from $10 to $50 in 3 years is if we basically self-fund the whole thing,
Mm-hmm.
and we're just using our own locations. However, embedded in our model is the ability for us to scale rapidly, and that gets expressed as we can tokenize other assets. So let's say someone has like a friend of ours, like a 12 or 14 bedroom home. It's not really great for Airbnb, it's too much pain to manage, but it's extremely nice. They can actually invest that into the Cohere ecosystem. And all of a sudden that property that, who knows, might be worth $4 or $5 million. Mm-hmm. Now, once that's tokenized and brought onto our books as a Cohere venue, which we're operating, we're filling with our members, it's just another epic place to live. Now, that just increased the value of the token, because now we have another $4 or $5 million asset on the books. And right now we're talking to, 6 or 7 different locations around the world with some very, very substantial assets. Assets are much more valuable than that. And so if we were to onboard another $50, $60 million of assets, now you can just imagine what the token's valuation would go to.
And so that's kind of like the thing is, like, it really depends on the business development that we start to access, like whether it's a bunch of properties or it's just buildings that we're making. It doesn't really matter either way. They're going to be very valuable. And what happens is that because the members, like, imagine if Uber were to give every driver a piece of the company. The initial drivers would be millionaires by now. They could retire. And that's kind of the way we're talking about this. It's like every member has the opportunity to become an owner, and they have a whole bunch of ways they can do that. So if we're bringing in assets and members are getting in, they're seeing the value that we're bringing into both their personal lives as well as the creation of this massive network of communities. They're going to have all these different opportunities to go to these places. It's going to increase the value of not only their personal experience in their lives, but also the communities that we're bringing in. What occurs is the person who brought the property in gets tokens, and those tokens are now worth more than their individual property, because there's 7 or 8 other properties in the pool. And as we bring in more, build more, that person's individual ownership is now much greater than their personal asset that they have. And we make it very easy for them to onboard effectively. So the members are now really enticed, really incentivized to want to not only go to these locations, but try to find ways to access more equity.
Imagine that instead of going and renting somewhere, you went there and you actually had your garnering equity.
And you own that place.
And you don't own that place, you own a share of a bunch of places all over the world. Now, that's also another important aspect. Right now, real estate is a really good hedge against hyperinflation, or inflation, or even in some ways deflation. So the challenge is right now, like let's say you're in SF, San Francisco, and you want to try and get out of the city, you want to buy a new hard asset, so you buy a house in South Lake Tahoe. South Lake Tahoe almost burned down a few months ago. If you're in all the south of the United States, or in BC, Canada, or, in many places, the intensity of natural disasters are now at such a tipping point, insurance companies are dropping coverage. So people want to put money into real estate, but what is safe real estate? You're going to build a house in Florida? You're going to buy a townhome in Florida where sea level rise is, destroying the groundwater? So what's embedded in this model, which is really cool, is that it's akin to a real estate investment trust. By having shares of buildings all over the world, you now have inherently insulation if there's a black swan event that wiped out one of the real estate pieces, because you're secured by 100 others.
Yeah, and we're also doing our extreme due diligence to build in areas that have a lot of resiliency in that direction anyway. So we are taking on a lot of responsibility to ensure that the assets are will retain their value, and not, if not that, grow. So, God, I mean, there's so many ways to like describe what Cohere is. One way you can think of it like a massive real estate management company that like is like sharing the ownership.
It's multifaceted. It has many facets. And one way we explain this to investors is that remote working is booming. You know, everybody has the freedom now, or many more people have the freedom to work wherever they want in the world, but they still want community. And then with this huge market segment of people who really care about the world, they're like impact investors or entrepreneurs or fund managers or cultural creatives who are all like, we actually should stand up for the health of the planet and for humanity. We should actually like do something about this. And so that's really kind of our demographic. And then Cohere, we're building in places like Ecuador, where we're at right now, where the cost of construction is a tiny fraction of the United States. And we're marketing to many people from all over the world, including Americans and North Americans and Europeans, where we're able to provide them half the rent cost easily, and yet our build cost is so much lower than anywhere in the United States or Europe that our margins are very, very high. And so just from the financial perspective, the company cash flows very, very quickly and very, very easily, because you've got this gigantic market that is being radically underserved. So that's our core business. Today what we've been speaking to is the token economics, which is what allows us to scale that business and create kind of an entire new way of thinking about tribal marketing. Because if I'm in Cohere, as you were noting earlier, I want Cohere to succeed because it's going to increase my money. And since my money is tokenized, I can sell that money very easily. So,
And as of now, are there any businesses or places that accept Cohere tokens?
Not really. And the reason,
it's kind of the secret sauce that we get into. It's like you want to. Okay, so by building an asset that people can live at, and having food and water and shelter all there, you're now covering a good 50% of what most people spend their time in. So you can start to create verticals very easily, especially if the people that you're bringing are high caliber people doing really cool stuff in the world. Now you have a pool of people who can provide goods and services to the other people in the community. You start to create this insular economy that can have goods and services traded between each other very easily. So now if you have 50% of your energy, time, and effort is going to food, shelter, water, and your social life, all of that's happening at Cohere locations. And then the people that are at those locations are able to give you the other 50% of things that you want, whether it's support on your business or it's massage therapy or any number of things. Like the transactional volume gets exponentially increased by the members that are in the pool. And so really what we're doing is creating high demand for something that's already valuable. It's a fractional ownership of a building, so that by itself is valuable. But then being able to use that as a currency between each other creates a whole different level, because that means that there's always going to be a limit to the amount that you're able to get tokens directly from Cohere personally, because of the way that our business operates. But that doesn't stop you from getting it from other people. If you're providing a good or a service that's really valuable to the community, they're gonna pay you in tokens. And so that's really the trick, is to create. If you want an economy and specifically a new currency to take off, you have to include kind of as many verticals as you can. And as more people see the value of this, they're going to want to try to get access to these. And so it's kind of like Clubhouse effect, where there's a line out the door for people to try to get it, but there is only so many ways you can. And so we kind of use multiple fulcrums to leverage the value of the token. If that makes sense or not, but
Yeah, it sounds good to me.
Yeah.